The billionaire watched a waitress press henna to his daughter's skin and felt his blood run cold. Layla didn't know she was painting the sacred Almara pattern, a royal design so guarded that outsiders had never laid eyes on it. Sheikh Rahman grabbed her wrist. "Where did you learn this?" he demanded. But the answer would crack open a family secret buried in the desert for 30 years and prove that some inheritances can't be erased, and it would change both of their lives forever. Layla was 24, invisible to the guests of Dubai's finest hotel. She spent shifts balancing trays, not secrets, but her hands held knowledge she didn't know was dangerous. In the desert, her grandmother had taught her the old patterns, whispering that they were only for weddings, only for women, only for those who carried the bloodline. Layla thought they were simply art. She never imagined a single swirl could expose her to the most powerful man in the Gulf, or that the bride she was asked to decorate held the key to the mother she had lost. Layla had not spoken her grandmother's true name in years. To her, the old woman was simply Nasra, the woman who raised her after Layla's own mother vanished during a border crossing when Layla was barely 5. They lived in a sandstone house at the edge of the empty quarter, where the wind sounded like whispering ancestors. Nasra had hands that never stopped working. By day, she ground henna leaves into powder. By night, she told Layla stories of the Almara, the nomads of the nomads, the people who could read the desert like a map. But she never called herself royal. She only said the patterns were a trust, passed from mother to daughter, and that Layla must learn them without asking why. So Layla learned. She memorized the spirals, the diamond lattices, the branching lines that looked like rivers no map had ever printed. When her grandmother died, the patterns stayed in her muscle memory like a language she could no longer speak but could still write. Dubai was supposed to erase all of that. At 19, Layla arrived on a service visa arranged by a cousin of a cousin, her suitcase holding 2 dresses, a photograph of Nasra, and a small tin of henna paste she had mixed with rose water and tea. She worked first as a cleaner in a 2-star hotel in Deira, then as a breakfast server, then at a cafe where she learned to smile through exhaustion. The years between 19 and 24 were a single long shift. She sent money to relatives who were strangers. She slept in a room shared with 3 other women. She told no one where she came from, except to say Yemen, because saying the true village meant explaining a world that Dubai preferred to forget. But the henna stayed with her. On rare days off, Layla practiced on her own hands and feet, drawing in the same way Nasra had taught her, using a cone made from a plastic bag. Other workers noticed. A Filipina housekeeper named Jo asked for a design before her niece's wedding. Then a Moroccan receptionist wanted something small. Layla never charged much, only enough for phone cards. She never drew the sacred patterns. Those felt too close, too heavy. She drew flowers, peacocks, simple netting. It was enough. The 5-star hotel was a different planet. Glass towers, marble lobbies, a private beach where the sea looked vacuumed. Layla worked banquets, carrying trays of saffron tea and gold-dusted chocolates. She was trained to be invisible, to never make eye contact, to anticipate without being seen. The hotel hosted royal families, oil executives, and celebrities, but Layla rarely learned their names. She was too busy watching for empty glasses and dropped napkins. Then came the week of Amira's wedding. Amira Rahman was 22, the only daughter of Sheikh Khalid Rahman, a billionaire whose name appeared in financial papers but whose face was known to every person in the Gulf. He owned ports, logistics companies, and a chain of luxury hotels. But among the staff, the gossip was not about his money. It was about his grief. His wife Noor had died when Amira was 8. Noor had been from the Almara, and her death had flicked a switch in the Sheikh. He became colder, more exacting, more protective of his daughter. Amira had grown up behind gates, educated by private tutors, never without a security detail. Now she was marrying the son of a powerful merchant family, and her father had spared no expense. The wedding would take place in 3 days. The ballroom was already being transformed with white orchids and silk. The crisis began on a Thursday afternoon. The hotel's preferred henna artist, a woman named Nada, had been booked for months. But Nada's mother suffered a stroke in Abu Dhabi, and Nada flew to her side. The wedding planner, a British woman named Harriet, made 20 calls in 2 hours. Every reputable artist was already committed. The bride was inconsolable. Henna was not decoration. It was the one ritual Amira had demanded, the only piece of her mother she could physically wear on her skin. Her mother's family had been known for designs that were not in any book. Amira had seen photographs. She knew the patterns were special. She did not know why they had been kept secret. That was when Layla's co-worker, Joe, mentioned her. Joe told Harriet, "The Yemeni girl Layla, she can draw anything. She did my niece's design better than the professionals." Harriet was desperate enough to listen. She found Layla in the staff corridor, still in her uniform, and told her the request. Layla shook her head. She was a waitress, not an artist. She had never touched a bride. She had never drawn in a palace. But Harriet was already dialing the Sheikh's assistant. "Please," she said, "just look at the bride's hands. If you can't help, we'll find someone else." Layla was escorted to the bridal suite on the 15th floor. The room smelled of jasmine and new silk. Amira sat near the window, her dark hair loose, her face pale with the kind of sadness that money could not hide. She was smaller than Layla expected, younger than her 22 years. When she saw Layla, she did not look at the uniform, she looked at her hands. "You have the same freckles as my mother," Amira said quietly. "Here," she touched her own wrist. "The women in her family always had them." Layla felt something move under her skin, a kind of recognition she could not explain. She sat down and opened her small tin of henna. The paste was old but still good. Amira held out her hands, and Layla began. The first few lines were ordinary, a simple vine along the bride's index finger. But then Layla's hand stopped obeying her mind. It moved with a knowledge she had not consciously chosen. The cone in her fingers traced a diamond lattice that branched into 7 points. It was the opening of a pattern Nasra had made her practice 1,000 times. The one her grandmother said was only for women of the bloodline, the one no outsider had ever seen. Layla tried to pull back, but the pattern kept flowing, as if it had been waiting for this exact skin. Amira's eyes were closed, her breathing slow. Neither of them heard the door open behind them, but Layla felt the air change. She turned just as Sheikh Khalid Rahman stepped into the room. His eyes went first to his daughter, then to the half-finished design on her palm, and the color drained from his face. For a long moment, he did not speak. Then he crossed the room in 3 strides, grabbed Layla by the wrist, and his voice came out as a low, terrified whisper. "Where did you learn this?" he demanded. "Answer me, where did you learn this pattern?" Layla felt the blood stop in her wrist where his fingers dug in. The room had gone silent, the kind of silence that follows a break in the world. Amira's eyes flew open. "Baba, what are you doing?" she said, but Sheikh Khalid did not look at her. He was staring at Layla as if she had just stepped out of his wife's grave. "Tell me," he said again, his voice low and ragged. "Where did you learn this pattern?" Layla could barely breathe. She had served this man coffee once 2 years earlier and he had not noticed her. Now his hand was around her wrist, and every camera in the hallway outside was still rolling. She forced the words out. "My grandmother, she taught me when I was a child." "Your grandmother's name?" "Nasra," Layla whispered. "Nasra bint Rashid." The sheikh's grip loosened. For a long moment he just stood there, his lips parting slightly, his eyes moving across Layla's face as if he were reading a map he had lost years ago. Then he did something none of the staff had ever seen him do. He stepped back, turned away, and pressed one hand against the window frame as if the room had tilted. Amira rose from the chair, her palms still half covered in wet henna. "Baba, you are scaring me. What is this?" Khalid turned back slowly. His voice was no longer command. It was the voice of a man trying not to break. "This pattern is called Bint al-Sara, daughter of the desert. It was not taught, it was inherited. Only the women of your mother's bloodline knew how to draw it. I have seen it exactly once before." He looked at Layla. "On the hands of my wife, the night before we married, it was drawn by her aunt, a woman named Nasra." The room seemed to tighten. Layla shook her head. "That cannot be. My grandmother was a poor woman from a village near the empty quarter. She never said she had royal family." "She would not have said it," the sheikh replied quietly, "because to say it was to be hunted." He stepped closer, but this time his hand did not grab. Instead, he sat down heavily in the chair beside his daughter and pressed 2 fingers to his temple. "Your grandmother did not tell you everything, Layla. She could not. The Almara are not only nomads of the desert. They are keepers of lines that go back centuries. My wife Noor was from the ruling family of that tribe, and Nasra was her mother's sister, the one who broke the blood contract." Layla felt the world rearrange itself. She had grown up with a grandmother who washed clothes by hand and walked barefoot to the well. The idea that Nasra was connected to a Gulf dynasty felt like a story from television, but the Sheikh's face was not entertainment, it was grief. Why did they erase her? Amira asked, her voice small. Khalid looked at his daughter, and for the first time since entering the room, tenderness returned to his expression. Because Nasra fell in love with a man from Yemen, a good man by all accounts, but not Al-Mara. The elders called it a betrayal of the line. They gave her a choice, leave him or leave the family. She chose him. They tore her name from the genealogy, burned her photographs, and forbade anyone from speaking of her again. Your mother Noor was a girl then. She never stopped looking for her. Layla's throat burned. And my mother, she asked. She disappeared at the border. I was 5. Was that part of this? Khalid closed his eyes briefly. I do not know, but if Nasra was your grandmother, then your mother was my wife's cousin, which means you are not a stranger in this suite, Layla. You are family. The word landed like a stone. Amira stared at Layla with a new kind of wonder. Then my mother's pattern did not disappear with her. It was inside you the whole time. Layla looked down at her own hands, the hands that had carried trays and mopped floors and mixed cheap henna in a shared room. She had spent 6 years believing she was nobody. Now a billionaire was telling her she belonged to a royal line, and the proof was half finished on his daughter's palm. But before she could answer, the door opened again. A man in a dark suit stepped inside, his phone already raised. It was Faisal, the head of hotel security. His eyes went to the sheikh, then to Layla, then to the bride's stained hand. So we have a problem, he said. The footage from the corridor, someone has already sent it to the press. Khalid rose from the chair and the softness in his face vanished. Which corridor? The one outside this suite. It shows the staff member being brought up, and then it cuts to your voice through the door. The word bloodline is clearly audible. It is already on social media. The sheikh's jaw tightened. He was not a man who let the world see his family's pain, and now the world had heard it through a door. He turned to Faisal. Lock the floor, no one leaves, no one speaks to the media, and bring me the wedding planner who decided to hire her, then get the groom's father on the line. Faisal nodded and disappeared. Layla's heart hammered. She had come to help a nervous bride. Now she was in the middle of a family crisis that was spreading across the Gulf at the speed of a single forwarded video. She looked at Amira. The bride had not moved. Her left hand was still extended, the unfinished pattern glowing dark against her skin. Please, Amira said quietly, her eyes wet. You have to finish it. My mother would have wanted it finished. But Khalid shook his head. Not yet. Not until I know who is watching and what they want. If the council learns that Nasra's granddaughter is here, the wedding could collapse before the first guest arrives. He turned to Layla, and his voice softened again, but only slightly. You are not in trouble, but you are not safe either. Do you understand? Layla did not understand. She only knew that the pattern her grandmother had forbidden her to show in public was now glowing on the hand of a bride whose mother was dead, and that a man with $4 billion was telling her she was not safe. Outside the door, a phone began to ring. Khalid crossed to the window and answered it without checking the number. Layla could not hear the other side, but she watched his shoulders go rigid. When he spoke again, his voice was in Arabic, fast and hard. The only word she caught clearly was Nasra. Amira looked at Layla, and in that look there was both fear and kinship. The same blood moved in both of them, and now it had been seen. Khalid ended the call and stood very still. When he finally spoke, he did not turn around. That was Suleiman, the groom's father. He saw the video. He is asking why a waitress from Yemen is drawing the sacred pattern of the Al-Mara on the hands of his future daughter-in-law. He wants a full explanation before the engagement dinner tonight. He turned, and he is not asking. Layla felt the floor shift. She had gone from invisible server to the center of a dynastic confrontation in less than 4 minutes. She looked at Amira's half-finished hand and then at the sheikh. I can stop, she said. I can wash it off. I will leave. I did not mean to cause this. It is too late for that, Khalid said. The pattern has already been seen. If you leave now, the story becomes that I brought a fraud into my home. If you stay, the story becomes that Nasra's line has returned. Either way, you are in it now. He walked toward her, and for the first time Layla saw not anger but something closer to respect. My wife spent her whole life trying to find her aunt. She died with that unfinished. The one thing she knew was that the pattern must not be lost. She would have given anything to see what you just drew. He paused. So before I decide what to do next, I need you to tell me one more thing. Layla braced herself. What? Did your grandmother ever tell you why the pattern was forbidden outside the bloodline? Did she tell you what it actually means? Layla opened her mouth, but the truth was complicated. Nasra had told her it was a blessing and a protection, but she had also said something else, a detail Layla had never repeated to anyone. The pattern was not just decoration. It was a key, and in the wrong hands, it could be used to claim a branch of the family that had been sealed for 30 years. She looked at the sheikh and spoke the words that would change everything. She said it was a sign that whoever wore it could be recognized by the women of the line, that if the family ever tried to erase us, the pattern would bring us back. Khalid stared at her, then very slowly he smiled, but it was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who had just realized the trap his wife's family had set was still active. Then your grandmother was cleverer than all of them, he said. Because tonight at the engagement dinner, the whole family will see it, and they will know exactly who you are. He looked at Amira. Finish the design, but not here. You will do it in the ballroom in front of every guest as soon as Layla has changed into something appropriate. He turned back to Layla. You will not serve tonight. You will sit at the family table, and when the elders ask me who you are, I will tell them the truth, that Nasra's granddaughter has come home. Layla could not move. The world had become a room where every exit led deeper in. She thought of her grandmother, crouched by the fire, drawing the same pattern on Layla's young hand and whispering a warning. She had said the pattern would protect her. She had never said it would carry her into the heart of the family that had tried to forget her. And then, from the doorway, a new voice shattered the moment. It was Faisal again, but this time his face was pale. Sir, the groom's father is in the lobby. He has 3 men with him. He says he will not wait for tonight. He demands to see the waitress now. Khalid's smile vanished. He looked at Layla, then at his daughter. Stay close to Amira, he said. No matter what happens, keep drawing. Amira pulled Layla back to the low table, her fingers trembling. Finish it, she said. Whatever happens downstairs, my mother would want this finished. Outside the suite, the corridor had gone quiet, but Layla could feel the hotel holding its breath. She knelt beside the bride and picked up the henna cone. Her hand moved before she gave it permission. The pattern wanted to be completed. Amira watched in silence as the 7-point lattice closed into a star, then into a net of impossible intricacy. When Layla finally stopped, the design glowed dark and wet across Amira's palm, and the air in the room seemed to settle. Amira looked at it, then at Layla, and said, "It is exactly like the photograph." She stood and crossed to a small mother-of-pearl box on the dresser. Inside was a bundle of letters and a faded photograph of a wedding. The woman in the photograph had the same pattern on her hands, the same 7 points, the same branching river lines. Underneath, in handwriting Layla recognized as her grandmother's, was a single line in Arabic. Amira translated it slowly. "If she ever comes to you, do not let her leave." Layla felt the air go cold. Her grandmother had written these words years before Layla was ever called into this suite. She had known, she had prepared, but she had not warned. "You think she meant me?" Layla whispered. "I know she did," Amira said. "My mother kept this box by her bed. She used to say that the women of the line would find each other even if the family tried to bury them." Downstairs, the elevator doors opened onto a different kind of silence. Sheikh Khalid stepped into the private lobby and found Suleiman al-Harbi waiting with 3 men in dark jackets. Suleiman was older than Khalid, his beard trimmed to sharp precision, his eyes as flat as currency. He did not offer a hand. "I will speak plainly," Suleiman said. "That pattern is not decoration, it is a claim. By putting it on your daughter's skin, you have invited scrutiny neither of us can afford." Khalid did not blink. "She is family. I have nothing to hide." "You may not," Suleiman replied, "but you have no idea what you have uncovered. Nasra was not just exiled, she was sealed. Her name was removed from the lineage. Her descendants were declared dead in the eyes of the tribe. If this waitress is truly her granddaughter, then that seal is broken, and everything my family spent 30 years building becomes contestable." Khalid stepped closer. "So this is about property, not honor." Suleiman smiled, but it never reached his eyes. "It's about succession. The women of the Almara carried more than patterns. They carried the right to name the next matriarch. When Nasra refused the arranged match and fled, The council chose a new line. To this day, the old trustees sign papers with a seal copied from the same 7-point lattice. If a true heir appears, every contract can be challenged, including the one that makes this marriage useful to both our families. Khalid felt the implications settle like dust. You came here to threaten her. I came here to offer you a choice, Suleiman said. Send the waitress away before tonight's engagement dinner. Say she was an imposter, pay her, deport her, do whatever you wish. If she is gone, the seal remains unbroken. My son marries your daughter and our families merge without complication. If she stays, the council will come, and they will not care about your billions or your grief. He paused. I have already made one phone call. The elders are sending an emissary. You have until 8 o'clock. Khalid said nothing for a long moment. Then he leaned in, his voice very low. My wife spent her whole life looking for her aunt. She died with that search unfinished. I will not erase the woman my wife called family, not for your contracts, not for your marriage, not for you. Suleiman's expression hardened. Then you have chosen war with the people who made your wife's tribe powerful. He turned and walked toward the lobby doors, his men falling into step. Over his shoulder he added, ask the waitress what the 7th point means. If she is truly Nasra's, she will know its name. If she does not, she is a fake, and I will have her removed from this country before midnight. The doors hissed shut behind him. Khalid stood alone in the empty lobby, the threat still ringing. He had heard of the 7th point only once, nor had whispered it in her sleep during the worst nights of her illness. She had not explained. She had only said it was not for him to know. Now it could cost Layla everything. Upstairs, Faisal intercepted Khalid outside the bridal suite. His face was tight with fresh alarm. So the situation is worse. 3 women from the Al-Mara Council have arrived. They say they saw the video and recognized the pattern. They are requesting immediate access to the bride and the artist. Khalid turned. How did they get here so fast? They were already in Dubai for the wedding, Faisal said. It seems they were not invited by us. They came as guests of the groom's family. The words landed like a door slamming. Suleiman had not called the council after the video. He had already brought them here. The wedding had been the stage for this moment all along. Khalid looked through the suite doorway and saw Layla kneeling beside Amira, their heads closed together, the bride's hand now covered in the completed pattern. She looked like she belonged there. She also looked like she was about to be handed to the very people who had tried to erase her. He stepped inside and closed the door. Layla, he said quietly, I need you to tell me the truth. What did your grandmother teach you about the 7th point of the pattern? Layla's hands stilled. For a second, she was back in the sandstone house, the wind whispering through the cracks, her grandmother's fingers guiding her own. Nasra had drawn the pattern again and again. But when she reached the 7th point, she had paused. She had touched Layla's chest and said only one word, a word Layla had never spoken aloud. She told me it was the name of the first matriarch, Layla said carefully. She said the name was not to be spoken except in the presence of the council, that it would identify me. She looked up at the sheikh, but she never told me the name. She said I would know it when the time came. Amira gripped her arm. Then how will you answer them? Layla had no answer. She only knew that her grandmother had never failed her. And now, with the council inside the building and the groom's father moving to destroy her, she had to trust that the old woman's final secret would surface in time. Before anyone could speak, a knock came at the door, 3 knocks, slow, deliberate. Faisal's voice came through, thin and formal. Sir, the council women are here. The room seemed to darken. Layla sat back on her heels, her hands sticky with henna, her heart pounding against her ribs. Amira looked at her father. Khalid straightened his jacket and walked to the door. He paused with his hand on the handle and looked back at Layla. Whatever happens next, he said, do not apologize. You are either their daughter or you are not. Either way, you are not alone. He opened the door, and there, framed in the corridor light, stood 3 women in black abayas, their faces lined with age and authority. The tallest one stepped forward. Her eyes found Layla immediately, then dropped to Amira's henna-covered hand. She did not speak. She simply raised one hand and pointed at the unfinished edge of the pattern. You have drawn the Bint al-Sara, she said. Now tell us, child, what is the name of the 7th point? Layla opened her mouth, but the room swam. In that instant, she understood that the real test was not whether she had memorized a word. It was whether she had become the woman her grandmother believed she could be. And somewhere beneath the fear, beneath the years of invisibility and borrowed names, she felt something ancient shift. The word was there, she just had to let it rise. The silence in the suite was absolute. Layla closed her eyes. She saw Nasra not as an old woman, but as she must have been decades earlier, young and unbroken, drawing the pattern in the sand with a stick while a small girl watched. And then Layla heard it, not as a thought but as a voice. The word came out before she could doubt it. Al-Wafiya, the faithful one. The seventh point is called Al-Wafiya. For a moment no one moved. Then the eldest councilwoman raised one hand and pressed it over her heart. The other two did the same. The daughter returns, she said. Nasra did not fail us. Amira began to cry. Khalid braced himself, but the women did not advance with anger. The eldest stepped forward and knelt before Layla. She took Layla's henna-stained hands and turned them over, studying the lines. Your grandmother was my teacher, she said. She was not erased, she was hidden. We kept her face in our memory and her name in our silence until the heir appeared. You have not broken the seal, you have fulfilled it. Layla stared at her. But my grandmother said the pattern would bring us back if the family tried to erase us. It did, but we never forgot her. The 7 points were always a record of the first matriarch and her 6 daughters. The 7th point, Al-Wafiya, was the daughter who stayed loyal while her mother was cast out. Nasra was named after her, and you are her blood. The elder rose and turned to Khalid. Suleiman al-Harbi has spent years trying to control the contracts that pass through the female line. He arranged his son's marriage to your daughter because he believed the old line was dead. He did not expect Nasra's granddaughter to appear in the same hotel on the same day, drawing the forbidden pattern. She glanced toward the door. He brought us here thinking we would confirm his rights. He was wrong. Khalid's face tightened. Then the engagement dinner tonight will not be his announcement. No, it will be hers. The elder pointed at Layla. Once the full council sees the pattern and hears the name, the contracts revert. The succession of the Almara will no longer be claimed through Suleiman's family, but this also places a target on her. Amira stepped forward. Then I do not want the wedding, not if it puts her in danger. The elder's expression softened. The wedding can still happen, little one, but only after the truth is recognized. Your mother nor knew this. She married your father for love, not for succession. That is why Suleiman's family has always resented your line. Layla felt the room steady. What do I have to do? Tonight you will not hide in the kitchen. You will walk into that ballroom with your head uncovered and your hands visible. You will stand before the council and the guests and let them see the pattern. Then you will speak the name again, not as a waitress, not as a stranger, as Nasra's heir. Khalid stepped forward. And if Suleiman tries to stop her, the elder woman smiled. He will not. Because the moment she speaks, every elder in the room will know his contract is void. He will lose more than a marriage. He will lose the lands, the ports, and the guardianship he has been borrowing from the women's seal for decades. Outside the window, the first call to evening prayer echoed across the city. Layla stood still, the henna dry on her hands. She had arrived at the hotel that morning as a server. She would leave the ballroom as the keeper of a line. But the real shock was not the title. It was the realization that her grandmother had prepared her for this exact night. Every hour of practice, every whispered rule, every warning not to show the pattern in public. It had all been training for a single appearance before the people who thought she was dead. Khalid turned to Faisal. I need a dress, not a uniform, something modest, elegant, and made for a woman who is about to be seen. Then he looked at Layla. Do you trust me? Layla thought of the first moment he had grabbed her wrist. The fear, the anger, now the same man had offered her protection. I trust my grandmother, she said quietly, but I will accept your help. Khalid nodded. Then we have 1 hour. The next hour passed in a blur of movement. Amira helped Layla wash and prepare, retrieving a deep green silk dress from the family's suite. It was simple, high-collared, with long sleeves. Layla looked at herself in the mirror and barely recognized the woman looking back. She was no longer invisible. Her hands, stained with henna, were the same hands that had carried trays and scrubbed counters, but now they also carried a lineage. At 7:45, the ballroom was already full. The engagement dinner had been rearranged by Suleiman himself, who believed the council would side with him. He had placed himself at the head of the family table, his son beside him. At the far end sat the 3 council women, their faces unreadable. The guests had been told only that a special announcement would be made before the meal. Cameras from Gulf Media were present, arranged by Suleiman to capture his son's triumph. When Layla entered, conversation faltered. Some guests recognized the waitress from the corridor video. Others simply noticed the bride's unfinished pattern now completed on Amira's hand and the matching stain on Layla's. The groom's father rose from his seat, his face contorting with barely controlled rage. "What is the meaning of this?" Suleiman demanded. Khalid stepped forward. "The meaning is simple. Before this marriage is blessed, the Al-Mara Council must recognize an heir. That heir is in this room." The eldest councilwoman stood, her voice carried without a microphone. "The pattern has been drawn. The seventh point has been named. Let the woman step forward and speak." Layla walked forward on legs that did not feel like her own. She stopped in front of the council table and raised her hands. The henna was dark against her skin, the 7-point lattice complete. She did not look at Suleiman. She looked only at the women of the tribe. Then she said the word again, this time so that every corner of the ballroom could hear it. "Al-Wafiya." A murmur ran through the room. Several older guests pressed their hands to their chests. The council women rose as one and bowed their heads. The eldest spoke. "The lineage is restored. Nasra's line lives." Suleiman slammed his hand on the table. "This is absurd. She is a waitress from a poor village. She could have learned that word from anyone." The elder turned to him with cold finality. "Only the bloodline is taught the seventh point. You know this. Your grandfather sat on the council when Nasra was cast out. He signed the exile. And he spent the rest of his life hoping no one would come to claim what he stole." Suleiman paled. His son, a young man named Tariq, stood and moved toward Amira. He did not look like a perpetrator. He looked like a man realizing his father had built his future on a lie. "Then the marriage contract is void?" he asked. "Not void," the elder said. "If the bride and groom choose each other, the original marriage may proceed, but without the land and trade rights your father attached to it. It will be a marriage, not a takeover." Tariq turned to Amira. "I did not know. My father told me these arrangements were formalities." He extended his hand. "If you will still have me, I will marry you as a man, not as a deal." Amira hesitated, then looked at Layla. Layla gave the smallest nod. Amira took his hand. "Then we will marry, but not tonight, after the elders rewrite what your father broke." Suleiman began to protest, but the elders had already motioned to security. Faisal stepped forward and quietly informed Suleiman that his presence was no longer required. His son did not stop them. For the first time all evening, Layla allowed herself to breathe. She turned to Amira and the two women embraced. They were strangers that morning. By nightfall, they were cousins, bound by a pattern neither of them could have drawn alone. Then the elder approached Layla once more, holding a small velvet pouch. "Your grandmother left something for you, not with us." With the sheikh's wife before she passed. She placed the pouch in Layla's hand. Inside was a ring of dark silver, engraved with the same 7-point lattice and a folded paper. Layla opened it. The handwriting was Nasra's, unmistakable. The note read, "If you are reading this, you have returned. Remember, the pattern is not for the powerful. It is for the forgotten. Use it to serve them." Layla closed her fingers around the ring. She understood now. Her grandmother had not sent her into a trap. She had sent her into a purpose. Everything she had survived, every invisible shift, had led to this one turning. And the true gift was not status. It was the chance to ensure that no other girl from the village would be erased. She looked up as Khalid approached. He no longer looked like the man who had grabbed her wrist. He looked like a father acknowledging an equal. "Welcome home," he said quietly. But even as he said it, the eldest councilwoman added something that made the room go cold. "There is one more thing, Layla. Your mother did not die at the border, she was taken, and the man who ordered it was Suleiman al-Harbi." She paused. "She has been alive all these years, and tonight after the dinner we will tell you where she is." Layla felt the ring press into her palm. She had come for a wedding, she had found a family, and now she had found a hunt. The true search was just beginning. Layla stood at the window long after the ballroom emptied, the velvet pouch still warm in her hand. She thought about all the women who had carried the pattern before her, the first matriarch, her 6 daughters, Nasra, her mother. They had been told to disappear, yet they had drawn themselves back into existence with paste made from crushed leaves and memory. The pattern was never decoration. It was proof. It was a message from women who refused to be unwritten. For 6 years, Layla had measured her worth by how invisible she could become. She lowered her eyes in elevators. She slipped through service doors. She lived as a shadow so her family could survive. But that invisibility had hidden something else too. It had hidden the very skills that would one day make her undeniable. The same hands that polished glasses and folded napkins were the hands of a keeper. She had not escaped her heritage. She had been carrying it all along, pressed into the grooves of her palms. The story spread that night. By morning, it was everywhere. News channels called it the wedding that broke a dynasty. People debated whether a waitress could really restore an ancient bloodline. But the elders did not need debate. The ring was older than any contract Suleiman had signed. The name Al-Wafiya had been spoken in front of witnesses. And somewhere in a distant city, a woman who had been taken from her daughter at the border learned that her child had come looking for her. Layla did not see herself as a hero. She saw herself as a woman who finally understood why Nasra had made her repeat the pattern until her wrist ached. Every line was a road. Every point was a memory. The seventh point was loyalty, but it was also a warning. The line never dies. It only waits. That is the part of this story that matters most. Not the wealth or the royal titles, not the dramatic confrontation in the ballroom. The part that matters is that an old woman in a forgotten village kept a promise to the future. She taught her granddaughter a pattern she was forbidden to show. She whispered that gifts are meant to be shared. And when the moment came, the granddaughter shared it with a bride who needed her mother and with a family that needed a future. The question now is not whether Layla will find her mother. The question is what she will do when she does, because Suleiman al-Harbi is not finished. His power has been damaged, but not destroyed. And the people who took her mother all those years ago are still watching. But that is another story. If this story moved you, leave a like and subscribe so you won't miss the next part. Tell us in the comments what you would do if you discovered an inheritance hiding in your own hands. And remember, no matter where you come from or how invisible you feel, your story may be the exact proof someone else needs to find their way home.